Hi, welcome back. I'm going to go through one cycle at a time. And I'm going to kind of let you work through taking the notes and then kind of coming back to the review part. So I'm going to explain the cycle. So you should go through, jot down any notes, and then kind of like watch the explanation. This nitrogen reading, it's really short. I think it's just really helpful in kind of trying to visualize what's going on with the nitrogen cycle. Again, you don't have to print out any of the articles. You can print them and draw on them if you want. You don't have to. These are the same like Thursday instructions that were in the calendar. I've kind of been putting everything two places, so you can hopefully find it somewhere. You have notes here on the nitrogen cycle and why nitrogen is important. We need nitrogen. DNA needs nitrogen. The crazy thing about nitrogen, and I'm going to go right to the diagram to explain, and I'm going to move myself. There we go. Is that we are completely surrounded by nitrogen. 78% of what you breathe in. So take a breath in. You're breathing in 78% nitrogen, only 21% oxygen. So most of what we breathe in, we don't use. We are only using the oxygen. So we're only using like 21% of what you're breathing in. The reason for that is that nitrogen is what's called a covalent bond, and nitrogen exists in our atmosphere as N2. So you have two nitrogen atoms that are joined together in covalent bonds. Hopefully you learned some of this stuff in chemistry-ish last year. But covalent bonds are when two atoms are sharing their electrons. So it's a really tight bond that's extremely difficult to break. And the way that nitrogen's bonded is a very, very hard bond to break. So our bodies can't break it up. So we need it to make our DNA. But we can't use the nitrogen that we breathe in. So it's completely around us, it's everywhere, but our bodies can't use it. And that's what makes it a little different and a little more complicated than the carbon cycle. So what I want you to focus on with the cycles is how each one is just a tiny bit different. They all have that very same biologic cycle. It's all about pooping and dying. Everybody eats, everybody dies, everybody poops, everything gets decomposed, and those nutrients are recycled. Everything's recycling. The main difference with the nitrogen cycle is that because we can't use it, nitrogen has to be what we call fixated or fixed. So there's bacteria in the soil that can take atmospheric nitrogen, and they're powerful enough to break it down. Some bacteria break it down into ammonia. And ammonia is when the nitrogen's been mixed in with water. And then other bacteria can break it down into nitrates and nitrites. Both are able to be used by plants. You do not need to know when it's ammonia, when it's a nitrite, and when it's a nitrate. All you need to understand is kind of the overall general concept that nitrogen fixation means that we're literally fixing the nitrogen. So bacteria take that nitrogen and boom, boom, boom through the cycle, they make it usable. They make it usable then so that plants can pull up the nitrogen nutrients from the soil. Plants use it then to make their leaves. Animals eat the plants. Animals get the nitrogen. Plants die. Animals poop and die. Decomposers return that ammonia to the soil. And then we have this same biologic cycle that we had in the carbon cycle, where it's going to just keep going through. The difference is this fixation. And then also we have denitrifying bacteria, where if we have a lot of nitrogen in the soil, that denitrifying bacteria will release it back into the atmosphere. Other kind of fun fact is that lightning can fixate nitrogen. That's if you've ever looked outside during a thunderstorm and the grass looks like extra green, like kind of like really bright green. That's because it basically got a quick shot of fertilizer. The lightning in the air lightning is hot enough and strong enough that it can break apart that nitrogen bond. So it can fixate the nitrogen. Any questions on this? So I did at the end of this, you have crash course. Hank explains everything again. I talk over him a couple times. You have an animation here that will walk through how nitrogen works. Review game here. And again, it asks you when it's ammonia, when it's nitrates and nitrites. I will not ask you that on your quiz on Friday. I don't know without looking it up. So that is basically the nitrogen cycle kind of in a nutshell. Again, very similar to carbon. Any questions about that, please make sure that you're either emailing me or showing up for some study sessions. I'll be back at you in a few minutes with phosphorus.